Welcome to another Telltale Books video. I'm Greg.
I'm Emily.
And we're here to do a review of, this time, a more current, more popular book than what we would normally do, House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. I hope I got that right.
For those of you who don't know, his sister is the lead singer of the band Poe.
Who?
So, I forget her name already. What
Who's
am I
the
done?
band?
Poe. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know that one.
Yeah. Listen to them. They're pretty good. I was on Spotify the other day listening to it. I'm like, oh,
Okay.
cool. Weird little tidbit of information I didn't know until just now. So
Well,
I gave it a Google.
Danielewski, let me consult the scrolls. No.
Consult the scrolls.
No internet connection, that's why.
No.
So I gotta do it without my notes.
Oh no. I believe in you, Greg.
Okay. So House of Leaves was Danielewski's first novel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm forgetting when it was published.
In the
and
early
I don't have my
2000s.
scrolls. Early 2000s.
Yep.
He hasn't written much of anything else. He's only written a couple other novels since then.
Mhm.
So he must have a full-time job.
I'm sure he does.
And this is something he does for fun.
Either that or his royalties take really good care of him. But I mean, his
Well,
first novel
maybe,
was an
but,
instant
I mean,
classic, so.
Yeah, but on the other hand, he hasn't gotten a TV deal or movie deal or anything like that.
Well, if he was
So
writing things like
that's
this,
with it.
how do you make this movie?
Oh, I think it would be a cool
I think it would
movie.
be really cool, but that's got to be an enormous budget. A huge budget.
Not really. You just need an old house and some empty rooms.
I don't know about that.
And
I
then
feel like
some
to do this justice. Oh, and CG is expensive though. That's a huge
Well,
team
yeah.
of people doing a lot of stuff. So, but yeah,
You just type your keywords into AI. Done.
I need you to turn House of Leaves into a movie. AI. I'd love to challenge AI with that. No, I wouldn't. It wouldn't be that
You might
good.
just bring down AI worldwide.
It
with
just
that
destroyed
stuff.
it. Yeah, it just destroyed AI.
Okay,
No.
so
Anyway.
you get to do the synopsis.
Oh, goody. Oh, so this is kind of like technically two stories going on with a third series of footnotes. So it starts with something called the Davidson Record, which is a critical, I don't even want to say essay because it's so much longer than that, but it is a long format critique and explanation of basically the story of William Davidson, who is a photographer who's gone cinematographer and wants to basically do a slice of life documentary about his partner and their two children moving into a house in, what was it, Virginia or something?
Oh, you got me.
Yeah, I can't remember specifically where. I think it was one of the
Somewhere out
Somewhere.
east.
north, what, I don't know. It's out east. Anyway, the old colonies.
Arkham.
Yeah, Arkham. So they buy this house, and when they move in, they kind of have a weird phenomenon where this random closet shows up between their bedroom and the kids' room, and they're like, well, maybe we just didn't notice it at first.
My
And then
wife
they're
would like that.
yeah, they look at the blueprints and they're like, no, this isn't supposed to be here. What the heck? And so they're like trying to like make sense of it. And then one day when William was trying to build some shelves or something, the dimensions of the house were incorrect. He's like, there's no way the inside is bigger than the outside. This makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
So as they're trying to figure out the dimension thing, because he suddenly becomes extremely obsessed with it, he gets his brother and one of his friends who's a professor involved. They're trying to figure out why the dimensions are all off, and then suddenly, as they're like, oh, well, I think we just made sense of the dimensions, suddenly some bookshelves that were flush with the wall next to them end up having like a 4-inch space there. So they realize that the house is shifting. Then they go downstairs and there's suddenly a hallway where there is not supposed to be one that should be leading outside, but it does not. It is just chilling there.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the entire Davidson record is the account of this documentary in which this family is tormented by this house that is in a continuous state of shifting and perhaps even leads into another dimension.
Mm-hmm.
That's the basic summary of that story.
Yeah.
In the midst of this story are footnotes by a gentleman named Johnny Truant,
Mm-hmm.
who found the manuscript for the Navidson record
Mm-hmm.
in the apartment of the man who passed away and wrote it, whose name is Zampino.
Mm-hmm.
And it is him putting commentary about his life and about what he's reading in the midst of this story. Then there is a third set of footnotes in which there are indications where an editor has come in and not been able to clarify certain things that either Johnny or or Zampino were ever able to clarify.
Mm-hmm.
So there's kind of like 3 different stories going on, because Johnny gets into some of Zampino's life as far as he understands it when he starts inquiring to people who are helping him write the Navidson record. And then, of course, we get Navidson and his family's record. This thing is crazy. Like, it's...
Literally.
Yeah, literally. There are, like, pages... I understand. There are pages that are like this, where it's just really small things. Like, a lot of people have a hard time reading this book because the format seems really unapproachable. Like, you have this, where some of this is mirrored. Thankfully, I found it still approachable because a lot of this stuff that's specialized or mirrored or has weird things going on is not actually worth reading. Yeah, this page where things are X'd out, that kind of thing. So a lot of people approach this book, try to read it, and then because of the format, they get kind of scared away.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, once you get into the story itself and start recognizing where the story shifts and when you're switching between POVs, this is actually a really quick read.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take long to read it all. And as you can see, like, the type's actually really large.
In places,
So
yeah.
a lot of people approach this book and are very intimidated by it because it looks like a really thick, long book.
Mm-hmm.
But it's compelling enough that you really don't... I read it in, like, no time at all. Granted, I also love reading textbooks, so some of it comes across a little textbooky, and I can see people having a hard time with that.
Mm-hmm.
I also could... Like, in my opinion, I could have done without Johnny Truant at all.
You didn't like
in
his
the story.
exploits with strippers?
His sexploits, you mean? I mean, I didn't mind them. But I don't feel like they
that was the
added
weird thing.
anything.
You'd read a portion of the text that's talking about the house, and then you
4
get this
pages of footnotes
4
about
pages
his...
of footnotes from Truant where he says, and that reminds
And then I
me,
banged
and he
this
goes
chick,
off on this
right?
tangent about chasing after these women,
He's
and
just a
and
skirt
it gets,
chaser.
it gets really, his behavior is kind of
Well,
disturbing that way.
He's got
but...
really disturbing and, like, high-risk behavior. He does a lot of drugs. He's very much, he's not even an anti-hero. He's just kind of...
Dirtbag.
Yeah, he just kind of is. He's an interesting character, but I could have done without it. I really enjoyed the Navidson record more than his story.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, I can see the merit of both. And in the way they were integrated, and watching him kind of spiral into insanity over time because of having read the Navidson record and made him paranoid. He has a history, you find out later, of schizophrenia and mental illness in his family. His mother was admitted and spent most of his childhood and part of his adult life in an insane asylum because of her issues and the delusional issues. So we've got, like, multiple unreliable narrators going on in this story, because Zampino, we find out a lot of the stuff that he's written in here and has citations for and footnotes, none of it's real. He's just making it up. Or because Johnny Truant is mentally ill and spiraling into some kind of insanity, we don't know if even what he's telling us is real either. So we've got a lot of unreliable narrators going on, and the only thing you don't even know, like, it's kind of funny because you don't even know if the Navidson record is real.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even know if this documentary existed or if it's just Zampino came up with this idea in his brain about this thing, and, like, there's enough evidence to say that he just made it up. It's not even real.
Well, but within the story, there are footnotes that refer to other people that claim to have seen the documentary
But we don't even know if that's real, because there's also
Right.
footnotes that refer to certain famous directors and stuff, saying they've seen it, and then the editor comes in and says none of these individuals ever recall being interviewed for this.
Exactly.
So it's very unreliable narrator, very entertaining though. Like I found, like, I didn't love Johnny Truant, but I didn't hate the story either. It was kind of nice to break up some of the monotony of some of the parts of...
He was an interesting character.
Yes.
Let's put it that way.
He wasn't redeemable by any means,
No.
but he was interesting. So it was an interesting conglomerate of things going on. This whole book is basically a collage.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of liked that. I liked the experimental design of it. I found that fascinating. But I can also see how people would have a hard time approaching it. There's like an entire appendices with like poetry and like visuals.
Which is cool. These collages
of things going on, which I thought were really nice additions to stuff. Just a series of letters from Johnny Truant's mom from the asylum. It's all one-sided, so it's kind of interesting to get that history. And he does allude to some of them in his writings, but we don't get the full story until we see her letters in the appendices, which I thought was a very cool addition to things.
Right.
And then like some old photography and stuff in the appendices. Oh, let me find that one page. I just saw it. Like some of these, you have to flip them around.
I didn't.
Yeah. I was glad I didn't read this in public. What was funny, though, for me is a bit of personal life things. When I started reading this book for the first time, I started getting vertigo.
Oh, yes.
And so I was like, there was a period of time I had like 3 weeks that I couldn't pick up the book because my vertigo was so bad and I had to go to physical therapy and stuff for it. And it was very funny because all my friends and family were joking. It's like, oh, it's because you're reading House of Leaves. It gave you vertigo. And I'm like, nah, I'm just stupid. I have weird health things go on all the time. My body betrays me. But it was just really funny that I got vertigo. So I'm like, I can't read this book because I just got to a part. I think I got to like these pages, like into the 130s. And they're trippy,
really messed up.
Trippy as hell. And I'm like, no, I can't even lay down and try to read this. Like the eye movement would start triggering things. And I was like, no, thank you. Yeah. So lots of interesting things to pull from this book. What did you think?
Yes, there is. This is an amazing book.
Yeah.
This is a great book.
Definitely
top tail.
Absolutely.
Definitely far and above most of what any of us have ever read before. The level of detail, I mean, she mentions a lot of footnotes that are just totally bogus, that seem like they're real, but there's a lot of discussions in this book
that are actual
about things that are real. There's a lot of like the way the house expands and becomes like a maze. He brings in the fact that it relates to the story of the Minotaur and it has a whole chapter talking about that whole mythology. And there's a lot of other symbolisms and related type stuff like that that is brought into this book. There's
psychology, philosophy,
there's just such an incredible wealth of real knowledge that went into the creation of this book that makes it mind-blowing.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating read. And again, this is another scenario where my bare bones synopsis would never be able to do justice. You have to read it to know it.
I mean, the surface of the book is you have this old house, and the old house changes.
And it's interdimensional.
And you don't know why it changes. Maybe it's interdimensional. Maybe the house is alive. You don't know. It makes groans, but is that the house alive, or is it just things shifting around, causing the scraping together? You don't know. You don't really get any answers.
Yeah.
And
or closure for any of it, really.
People do die in the house, but it's only because they're in the wrong place at the wrong time when the house shifts.
Yeah, because they decide to go into some exhibitions to try and explore these hallways and see what they become. And they end up unfurling into this giant maze, basically, of corridors, doorways, and staircases.
And, another reference that's brought into this, of course, when they're exploring the house and there's these stairs that are going down Dante's Inferno.
Yep.
And
it's
you
always
wonder
cold.
if this house isn't going down to hell. So there's all these different references that are pulled into this that just keep your mind going constantly.
Yeah. Or even
that
like
expand it from the basic story.
Even like the house depicting the moods of the characters who live within it. There was a lot of that being brought up where it's like, is the house unfurling because Will wants it to? Will wants this adventure? Is it unfurling because of the mentalities of those who are going on the expedition? Does it ever actually end? And talking about the dynamics of the family in relationship to the house and how they're interacting with it, how they're choosing whether to acknowledge or not, or ignore, or whatever, how they're coping with the fact that they have this paranormality existing in their space that was supposed to be their fresh start, essentially. And there's a lot of very complex relationships in here, not just with Johnny Truant as he skirt chases and tries to figure himself out, but the dynamics of the Davidson family.
Yeah.
Who I'm calling the Davidson family, just for lack of a better word, because he and his partner are not at this point married in their relationship. And they have 2 children. And it's so socially complex in so many ways that it's, if you want to just read it for the social dynamic, you can very easily. Because there's a lot of drama that goes on in this house.
Yeah.
And not just the house itself, which is so interesting.
And other literary references, of course, with houses
Tons
like
of
this
illusion.
are like Follow the House of Usher, or even the Castle of Otranto, where the family's fate is tied to the house. And so there's just so many references, so much depth brought into it, mostly through the footnotes. You got to read all the footnotes.
I know.
If you just read the basic story and skip the footnotes, it's not much of anything.
Yeah.
And it's not, a lot of people say how terrifying this is. I didn't find it so.
No, I found it more intriguing than terrifying.
Yeah, it's more fascinating. It's just intellectually so
Horror
rich.
doesn't feel like the right
deep.
genre for it.
It's not really, well, it's more like surrealism. It's not really science fiction. It's not really horror. It's not really fantasy. It's more surreal. More Ballardian.
Yeah. Yeah. Just real trippy. Trippy as hell. Is real trippy a genre? Because it needs to be.
Well, yeah.
Surrealism.
There is the whole psychedelic scene from the 60s that it would fit into perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really... There is so much to be said about this work. And there's so much to be said about each of the different characters, too. Like, there are reoccurring characters who kind of flit in and out of the story. Like, that one, I think the German guy who likes to beat the crap out of everyone because his girlfriend's a psycho or whatever. He keeps flitting in and out. Even those characters are so interesting and kind of larger than life. Even if they're just mentioned, they kind of keep coming back. And everything comes full circle eventually. Like, I think that's so interesting that there's so many details and yet they all matter. Every single thing in this book matters.
And I can't get my head around how difficult it must have been for Danielewski to keep this thing together and not just become a train wreck trying to put it all together,
I imagine it's
so
just
complicated.
One of those giant bulletin boards with all these like strings going to and from stuff, like a conspiracy theorist. This is so impressive of a work and so original as a work. It astounds me.
Yes.
Like every man, woman, and child needs to read this book at some point in their life.
Yeah, it's a brilliant book. I mean, anybody that just wants a straightforward linear story where everything's clear is going to hate this book. They're going to not even get through the first chapter. This is going to
challenge you a lot.
But anybody that wants to go on a real intellectual odyssey, I've never read anything quite as amazing as this.
Yeah, it is phenomenal. I do have some critiques. I would rather, more warnings for our audience. Don't get a paperback edition. It's so floppy. I had a really hard time holding it. And I'm not a sit up and read, I'm a lay down and read. So I recommend getting a hardcover of this.
A good hardcover.
Yeah, a really good, sturdy hardcover. But this is A book I will forever cherish. For the what the fuck
I wonder
did
what
I
the
just
audiobook
read?
is like. I'd like to hear the
I don't think
groans.
I looked. There isn't an audiobook, and I have
Oh.
no idea how they could even make one. It just can't be done.
Yeah, but the groans in it would
I
be so
know.
cool. Listening to
How,
that at 2
do they
a.m.
actually read these backwards?
Yeah, why not?
How do they read it upside down?
Why not?
Top to bottom and backwards?
know.
I think that would be funny.
But the other thing I would love to see is a movie. Yeah, it would
Yeah.
be super challenging, but what
It
a
would
cool
be
movie it
so
would be.
expensive, but it would be a phenomenal movie.
The right person handling it. I mean,
Mhm.
Blair Witch Project would have nothing on
Yeah.
this.
If Rose Red can exist, I feel like House of Leaves can exist.
Mhm.
If they can make Rose Red and do well with that, which I enjoyed that miniseries.
Yeah, that was good.
This would be better as a miniseries,
oh
I
yeah,
think.
this would be.
Yeah.
I mean, this would be.
It would have to be.
Kubrick should
Yeah.
be alive to do this
We
movie.
have to have a seance to bring back Kubrick to make sure that House of Leaves. And that's kind of funny, too, that you bring that up, because Kubrick is a huge inspiration and referenced a lot in this book.
Oh yeah, The Shining.
Yeah, with The Shining and those. But not just that, because Davidson is a photographer,
Mhm.
and his attention to detail, even in the way he edits the shots from the high cameras throughout his house as he's recording everything going on with his family and with his house. They keep coming back to Kubrick because it's just like the artistry is so much a part of it, which
Mhm.
you kind of see that as not just a theme in the story, but the way the book itself is laid out.
Yeah.
Every detail comes full circle
Mhm.
and is important in this, and I'm down to the design of the book itself is it's so fascinating to me.
Yeah, and of course we're both graphic designers, so we're both
Yeah.
drooling over all the cool typographic tricks that
Yeah.
are done in this.
So like this part is one of my favorite parts because it talks about a space getting smaller that he's crawling through
Mhm.
as he's exploring the inner workings of the hallway and the house in its other dimension. And just the way that they tighten up the leading and tighten up the kerning and then make all this white space so that this part is such a little sliver of information, and they do that for several pages. And in fact, I think they have it, it kind of grows from a tiny space to an even tinier space over
That
the course
keeps
of these
going, yeah.
several pages. So the way that design is integrated into giving you that sense and feeling of what's being described is so fascinating to me.
Mhm.
But I also see that as being, some of this is just absolutely crazy to look at, and I can I just saw one of the pages that was kind of fun to try and read. Where'd it go? These ones were fun.
Mhm.
Because you kind of just that kind of thing. But it integrates the experience into the design.
Mhm.
And I just think that is such a brilliant way to storytell
Yeah.
and to reinforce it without needing illustration
Mhm.
or anything like that. Not that you don't get it, because I mean, back here in the appendices, there's plenty of fun, full color things to look at.
Mhm.
But adding that extra layer of storytelling is just so phenomenal.
And it's what we always talk about, how the book is more than just a story. That a well done book is the whole experience with the illustrations and the typography and how the book was produced, and all that stuff comes together to create your experience reading it. And you just don't get that when it's just mass produced and not attention isn't paid to all
or
those
facsimile
details.
of an old book or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, going cheap is not the way to go.
No.
But they didn't. I can't imagine being a fly on the wall in the conversations with the editor and the publisher. Is it supposed to? Yep. Are you sure this is so unapproachable for the user? Yep. You do it or I'm out. I'm sure it was a lot of ultimatums and a lot of no, this is hard lined. You have to do it this way.
Can you imagine the editor taking it to his bosses
and being like,
saying, we should publish this, and they look at it and go, are you serious?
Yeah. So I can imagine this was very interesting and probably a very hard fought fight to try and get this published as it is.
Yeah.
With it,
Either that or
was
it's one of those
intentions.
things where everybody was on vacation, they snuck it through.
Yeah, and they're just like,
Because that happens
we're going to
sometimes.
ask for forgiveness and not permission. No matter how it happened, I'm so glad it did. Because this was just an absolute pleasure and adventure. I love that the experience of reading it is an adventure, not just the story. But you have to put in work with this book. You gotta, if you want to read it, you gotta flip it around. And
I want to see more publishers take the chance on more books like this.
yes, I think it's a really cool way of integrating design and storytelling, and it should be done far more. And I think maybe we might see more experimental things in the future. I feel like design is making a lot of steps, and a lot more people are challenging the this is how it's always been, or this is what we've always done, which I think is important in the design world in order to make anything worthwhile.
Yeah.
And in the publishing and, book world anyway, this is just phenomenal. So.
Let me make sure we're still capturing all this. Looks like
looks
it.
like we are. Yay. That's
And
good.
Camera's still going. Camera is still recording. Okay, I
Yay.
can edit that part out. Okay, so if there could be a top tail,
This is it. Yeah, this is our
still
number.
not better than the Time Machine. Sorry.
Yeah, no, this is my number one. I am very excited that this book exists, and I am surprised I haven't approached it sooner.
Yeah.
It's been on my radar, but I didn't know to the extent that the design was integrated. And maybe it's great that I approached it at this point in my life, because when I had first heard of the book and wanted to read it, I was a high schooler and would not have appreciated it for all it was.
Yeah.
And now coming from a design background and seeing all the layers of things they did in this book and just loving reading and loving storytelling in all its forms, I have, I think, a much more full appreciation for this book. And I feel like I need to read it at least 6 more times to make sure I caught everything.
Yeah.
So it's just a great work. Cannot recommend it enough.
No,
If you love
if you like to
experimental-
read this.
Yeah, if you love experimental, if you love dark stuff, if you like edgier stuff, if you like surrealism, if you love reading things and just being like, what the fuck did I just read afterward? This is the perfect book for you. And even if you aren't one of those people, this is still a book that is so worth reading. Because it is such a phenomenon to pop culture. It's it be here. Read it.
Yeah.
Go find it. You can even get it here at Blackheart Books, who has once again been kind enough to host us.
Yes.
So it is available here, and they also are on bookshops.com, so you can support Blackheart Books on bookshops.com and get a
Which
copy.
I think I do weekly.
Yeah. Yeah, if I had money, I would. My wish list is getting longer and longer. But yeah, so this is a very accessible book. You can find it just about anywhere, though. Go get it. Read it. Your life will change forever. I'm afraid to read other books after this because I'm afraid they're never going to be good enough. It's ruined me for other literature. But I'm just blown away. I'm so blown away by this work. Anything further you want to say about it?
Like I say, I don't have access to my notes because I don't have an internet
Well, and
connection.
they're so...
Some of the things I wanted to say I can't remember because I'm old.
Yeah, it happens. You don't have to be old to not remember. I have days where I'm not even here.
You have cats.
That's true. But they can't tell me what I said. They try. They do their best, but there's a language barrier. So...
But I mean, they're distractions. So
That too. They're very distracting.
they're distracting you from remembering stuff.
Yeah, and a husband. That's a
Oh,
lot.
yeah, that's
and a
worse.
very active social life. I can't remember it all. But yeah, this one will stick in my memory forever, though. And I will probably read it again and again because it's wonderful. So,
Yeah, it's one of those that I think you can go back and read it over and over
and still
find new stuff, new ideas, new thoughts from it. It'll just keep firing new ideas in your head. It's great.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. This is not a beach read.
No.
Don't take it to the beach for light reading. This is a very critical thinking book. So
If you have read it, leave your comments in the comments section of the video. We want to hear what you think of this book or thought of this book, or any further information you can provide to all of us about
favorite
this
parts, favorites, quotes, favorite anything. There's so much to
insights
glean from
into
this
Mr. Danielewski, because I know
Did you
nothing
hate
about
it?
him.
That'd be interesting to know, because, I mean, I'll let you be wrong, but you're wrong.
I know a lot of people who never finished it because they just couldn't.
Yeah,
Samantha's one of them.
it's a really hard, like, I think on Goodreads it said something like, maybe I read that wrong, but it's like, it takes people an average of 3 years to complete this book.
Mm.
Because it's one of those ones you gotta put down, kind of process, pick it back up, then you realize, oh, I forgot, then you gotta go read it, and so you end up stopping and starting it a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, some people, it just takes a really long time to trudge through. It is so worth it.
Yeah.
So worth it. So thanks for joining us, guys, once again. Like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Bye.